Very good.
City Council, can I ask for a motion to appoint Alderman Morris as Mayor Pro Tem for this evening?
I'd like to make that motion, please.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. Tonight's the City Council meeting for Monday, March 6th, 2023. Glad to see everyone here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We don't have a big audience tonight, but welcome. I'm going to bring the meeting to order, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, which we always do.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, City Clerk, I think you have to call the roll.
Certainly. Honorable Pro Tem Mayor Morris.
Here.
Thank you. Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Notes.
Here.
Alderman Preschlack.
Here.
Alderman Gushgarian.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Alderman Weber.
Here.
Please note that Alderman Rummel is out. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll start with comments from the mayor, which I don't have a lot, other than say we'll have an executive session following the meeting. So we will adjourn into executive session, so there'll be no further business after that. And no need to stick around. Then when we adjourn, we'll come back and then adjourn this meeting. So just to let everybody know. Comments from the city manager?
Thank you very much and good evening. I have two quick items for you. First, just a public service announcement and reminder to the City Council that next Monday, March 13th at 5 p.m., the city will be hosting its annual operating budget workshop at Dickinson Hall. Aldermen should have received their packets earlier this afternoon, so happy to answer questions in the coming week as you review that material. But just a reminder that the budget workshop is next Monday night, 5 p.m., rather than the traditional 6:30 start time, and at Dickinson Hall. Next, I'm thrilled to introduce our management analyst, Reagan Walsh, and our management intern, Yates McLaughlin, to talk a little bit about the community-wide survey, the process that we'll undertake in the coming months here. It's included on your omnibus agenda for action tonight. For those who don't know, the community-wide survey is a process we do periodically, usually every 5 years or so, and it's historically been done as a precursor to undertaking an update to the city's strategic plan. We are a couple years behind on that, and in large part because the strategic planning process was delayed due to COVID and our concerns about the ability to host large in-person workshops going back over the last year or two. But we do expect that strategic planning process to begin later this year, sometime in the fall, I would guess. And again, as a precursor to that is the community-wide survey. And so I've asked Reagan and Yates to prepare a brief presentation. They'll be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
That's a good sign. It's working. Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. It's my absolute pleasure to be up here presenting on a project that we're very excited about, and that is the 2023 Community-Wide Survey. As Jason just mentioned, my name is Reagan Walsh. I'm the management analyst, and behind me is Yates McLaughlin, our management intern. I do want to just briefly state that Yates, I want to thank you for your work so far on the community survey. We really wouldn't be where we are today without his work so far. I also said, as part of the deal for him being up here, any tough questions he has to answer. So I'm holding you to that, Yates. I'm sorry about that. So the purpose of why we are here today and our presentation is relatively straightforward. We are asking the council to approve an award of contract to conduct a community-wide survey. City staff is recommending the ETC Institute as the third-party vendor, and we are requesting amount up to spend $26,500. If awarded contract, the ETC Institute would work very closely with the internal project team in designing the survey and then ultimately reporting and administering the survey. In the next couple slides, I'm going to kind of discuss how we got to this decision, a little bit more about the survey process, and then I'll hand it over to Yates to talk about timeline.
Excuse me, Reagan, sorry to interrupt, but typically we have your slides showing up on our screens. Is that available or not available?
Find out.
Maybe just flipping a switch, but
Turn them on and turn it back.
that helps, huh? Turning.
Where is it?
It's this one up here.
Oh.
Here?
Which one?
There we go. With the pups.
I got mine.
I like the pups.
You should make it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman.
Okay, thank you. Now I can see.
We're all good? Okay, great. To give a little bit of background, Jason just kind of talked a little bit about background, but the city of Lake Forest historically has conducted a community-wide survey approximately every 5 years. The survey has been an excellent resident engagement tool, as well as getting good, what's the word I'm looking for? Data on the city services as well as satisfaction of those services. So again, this time around, it's really nothing new. We're looking for, again, implementing a survey we can get great feedback on, again, and then also with the precursor to the strategic planning process. We're trying to see if we can get any general focus areas and themes that we can move forward and begin that process coming in the fall. In terms of the vendor selection process, this was a rather thorough process, but also typical. We went through an RFP process with a total of 5 bids. Each bid was graded by the internal subcommittee and graded on a number of factors, including costs, quality of services, references, etc. After the internal grading committee ranked those choices, 2 clear finalists were kind of rose to the top. We did then a finalist interview, and after discussion with the internal subcommittee as well as with executive staff, ETC was selected. In the next slide, I'll get a little bit more into why we chose ETC, but I'll give a little bit of vendor overview right now. So the ETC Institute was formed in 1982 and has conducted over 3,500 surveys nationwide. I believe they have done business in all 50 states and also some countries around the world. Locally here, they are very familiar with cities in the Chicagoland area as well as the North Shore. I believe in the last 2 years, they have done surveys for Glenview and Glencoe. We're thrilled to be selecting ETC and asking for approval. We think they're a top-notch firm, and I'm excited to kind of speak on why this is so. So as you can see here, there was a lot of different aspects of why we liked ETC, but I believe the number one differentiator, that's very different with this survey and with this firm, is the survey customization. So when we're looking into the other finalist firm that was in our decision, they use a common survey called the National Community Survey. It's a survey that's used by other communities around, and I believe Lake Forest has actually used that survey before. The reason this survey is very common is because it is a pre-made survey, and it is great for benchmarking. But as you can imagine, when it is a pre-made survey, the questions are set in stone, and each community has very little opportunity to customize those questions or have any flexibility whatsoever when it comes to the survey instrument. So what ETC's approach is a little bit different. They start with these benchmarking questions that we can choose from, many that come from that National Community Survey, but they offer a complete customization approach where we can design the survey as we please, add in questions, and then most importantly, work with departments to see what questions are most beneficial to them so that we can get the best data possible and then use that data in an actionable way. I do have benchmarking here listed. I want to make note that we are not throwing away benchmarking by any means. We will be using questions from the National Community Survey so that we can grade the satisfaction and the quality of our services to nearby communities, as well as against ourselves over time. This, again, is just kind of a hybrid approach that ETC offers that we think is most beneficial, and I kind of think the best of both worlds, where you get the benchmarking but also the customization. I did touch on their references and history. They have great satisfaction from all of their past customers, but the cost was also a considerable factor. I believe they were the lowest bid out of all of the proposals, which gave us a very unique opportunity where we think the highest quality service was also the lowest bidder, which I know doesn't happen all the time. So that made a tough decision a little bit easier. And then finally, with reporting capabilities, again, this is another aspect where we think the ETC Institute stood out. I kind of touch on it in the next slide, but they offer many features in the report, including benchmark analysis, important satisfaction models, a lot of really cool things that I would let the consultant explain if approved later. But that's something that was just above the rest, and again, included in the cost. This was not an additional cost. This was something that was already included in the base fee. So to give a little bit of highlights on the survey instrument and the report features, I won't go too in depth, but the survey will be around 7 pages. It will be no longer than 7 pages, and it will be broken out by different department services. The survey will be available online. We expect most residents to take the survey online, but it will also be available by phone, paper, mail-in. We have a lot of different avenues for residents to use the survey. More of the broadcasting of the survey will be on ETC's side, but we will certainly be helping with the communications of that. Again, I have some varying question types. We have the flexibility to use multiple choice, open-ended, any question that we see most beneficial. So the report features here, I'm not going to go through each one, but you can see all of the really cool analytical tools that ETC uses. This includes the GIS mapping, open-ended comments analysis, and then something that we think is really interesting is the interactive data dashboard. This is both an internal and external dashboard that residents and staff can use to analyze survey results. Again, included in the base fee, and it was not offered by any other firm. So this is just another way to show our transparency with the data, see how we're using it to make decisions as well. I guess that was my last slide. Yates, I'll hand it over for a timeline.
Thank you, Reagan. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Temp and City Council. I'd like to first thank the Office of the City Manager staff for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of you as I continue my studies at Northern Illinois University. As Reagan stated, I will be providing you with a tentative schedule of events highlighting the survey's launch, the collection period, and the report that will be provided by ETC Institute via an in-person presentation. Before I begin, I want to convey that the data that you see in front of you, the dates, sorry, that you see in front of you are exactly what they seem, which is vague. This was expected from the start, as one of ETC's main components, as Reagan said, was the ability for the city to ensure that input from different departments is utilized to the greatest extent, and the time that it takes to do so may be different from department to department. We can expect each item on this timeline, however, to be within the relative range of what you see, but we want to make sure that all departments feel and realize a sense of ownership regarding questions that directly relate to their specific department. This will allow us to, instead of thinking in a period of time, or rather we want to think in a period of time rather than a specified date. Now, in terms of looking ahead to the community-wide survey process, the survey launch can be expected to happen sometime in the spring or early summer, which for a more detailed look can be around mid-April or May, depending on the turnaround time, of course, of department consideration and ETC implementing those changes. Following the survey launch that's facilitated by our chosen vendor, the survey will be open for 1 whole month. For example, if the survey launch happens on May 1st, the collection period will remain open up until June 1st. After compiling all of the data from respondents in the community, ETC has reported that there will be a 2-week grace period turnaround to send in the preliminary data for city staff. Once city staff has analyzed the report, we will come to a final draft where the project manager from ETC will formally present to you, the city council, on its findings. If this continues to follow the timeline, you can expect the on-site presentation in late summer or early fall, normally July to early August. We want to be open and flexible as possible in this regard. Thank you so much for your time, and we invite any questions you have on this matter.
Very good. It's an important effort, so questions? Alderman Weber.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. A quick question. As we know with surveys, it's most important to get as many responses as possible. So I think your outlets of both online, mail-in, et cetera, all the communication efforts that Dana does so well. The question is, are we thinking about any sort of incentive, city swag or something to maybe entice, more people to take the time to fill out a 7-page survey, whether it's online or written?
Thank you, Alderman Weber. That's a great question. There actually is included in the base fee of ETC's proposal I believe, a $500 Visa gift card. So for anyone, so someone will win that Visa gift card. But I do think that's an excellent point of city swag, or maybe something we can promote for a resident to possibly win. Maybe city manager for the day, Jason.
Yeah, I think something might
Bold.
be just kind of fun to, to help incentivize people to
thank you.
participate.
Thank you. Other questions? None? Oh,
How is the customization of the questions gonna take place? Will there be a subcommittee internally, and will you get feedback from the public? Because there's a balance between how well we're doing and then what you care about moving forward, and strategic questions, maybe in terms of dining, or what you'd like to see more of. I'm just kind of, spitballing here, but I'm just kind of curious how it's just what the process will be to finalize the survey questions on the customization side.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly one of the more difficult parts of the process. And I think that's why we're having a bit of a longer timeline. But we envision working with each department. We have the internal subcommittee right now has a representative from each department on the subcommittee. So they will be kind of in charge of leading that department in questions and updating what they think should be asked. We also, me and Yates, have believe that we'll probably have a couple meetings with each department to overview which questions they've changed, if they have any questions or concerns. And then our consultant has also said that he's been happy to sit in on any questions and concerns. He did recommend that internally we work on updating those questions and trying to think of ones that we think might be valuable, and then have the consultant come in at the end, review the questions, and give their best practice insight. But you're absolutely right. It's an interesting process, and we want to make sure that we're using questions that we can have benchmarking on, but also the other half of it, thinking forward strategically, what are the best questions that we can be asking to make sure we're providing the best services possible.
And I'll just jump in to say, I think to your question, not only certainly do we want, qualitative data on resident satisfaction with level and quality of services, but some of the broader questions too about what they're looking for in the community are important for us to gauge. And we've talked, for the better part of 2 years now about the number of new families who have moved into the community, and how do we really get a sense from them what is it they want to see both out of their city government and the community at large. So we'll work hard to try to find some questions that can begin to answer some of those questions.
on the notes?
How many residents within a household can respond to a survey? If you have 2 voting adults or 3 or 4 voting adults in a house?
I might have to follow up with the consultant on that. I do know that each survey is tied to a household. That's how they geocode the results and make sure that each survey is a Lake Forest resident. I am not quite certain on if 2 people can take it in the household, but I can follow up certainly and get back. I am assuming that both people can. There can be probably a range of people if they just supply the family information, because demographic questions will be asked at the end of the survey as well.
Following up on the customization, so as I understand it, they have a set of questions that they've already written, and you'll look within each department to either edit those questions and fine tune them to meet what we're looking for.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
And then these questions are best practice questions, as I like to think of them. They're tried and true, and they really like these questions, but they also understand that communities are different and that there may be questions we would like to ask that departments are looking to see. So I think a great example would maybe be the compost center. That's something that's very unique to Lake Forest. That could be a question we ask or dive deep into, but also we can edit the types of questions if we think the wording needs to change, as well as just the entire design of it.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? If not, well done, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good job.
I'll give them a slight kudos in addition to their first presentation in front of the city council. You may not have noticed, but they have matching Lake Forest ties on as well. So the lighting didn't do them any favors, but well dressed. So
Were those gifts
look,
part of their compensation?
that's right.
The swag.
Did we know there were Lake
Yes.
Forest ties?
All
They're
right.
hard to come by. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next is opportunities for citizens to address the city council. We don't have a lot, but we do have one. Miss Dawn Marie Mueller would like to address the city council, so please.
Good evening and a warm hello to you, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Morris,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
to all the good aldermen and women and the city staff, and of course to the public. I appreciate everyone here giving me this time. I'm just here to say hello and introduce myself to the community. I'm brand spanking new. My name is Dawn Marie Mueller, and for the time being, my mailing address is P.O. Box 727 here in town. On Twitter, I am at MagnetoDawn. My daughter is new over the last year and a half to the medical staff at Lake Forest Hospital. Her name is Amanda Elizabeth Mueller, and she is a general surgeon there. And I'm mom tagging along, finding my niche here in Lake Forest. I am a physicist with a strong engineering bent in aerospace engineering and in electrical engineering. Specifically, I am a space plasma physicist and solar radio astronomer. I listen for the solar flares on the sun, and I alert satellite agencies and operators when there's a big radio burst or microwave burst or X-ray burst that may disrupt satellite communications or spaceflight operations. So I'm into rocketry, and I understand with Jim Lovell having been in town for many decades that you're already used to having a family that's out in orbit. And so my mind is out there too. I hang with the NASA crowd, so to speak. So I just wanted to say hello. I'm also an avid genealogist and history buff. I love Lake Forest for all the history that you have preserved. I am appreciative that while being very forward-thinking and supporting wonderful community efforts to move forward, that you're also cherishing your past. My ancestry goes back to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, so I'm a colonial American genealogist, and I also do European too. My ancestors hosted General Washington at Morristown in New Jersey, and my ancestry is the Honorable Abraham Clark, signer of the Declaration of Independence for New Jersey. So I greatly appreciate that Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much and welcome. You know, physics is my favorite subject, so I'm glad you're here. All right, there being no other members of the community to talk, we'll move on to committee reports. And tonight there are no reports to bring to anybody's attention. So we'll move on to our omnibus vote consideration. And tonight there are 6, so I'll read each of these. And then if any member wants to take one or more of these separately, we can do that. So the first item is approval of the February 21st, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Number 2 is approval of the check register for the period January 28th to February 24th, 2023. The third is approval of a 10-year term for a 2023 general obligation bond issue. The fourth is approval to engage Matt Pawa of Seeger, Weiss, and Michael Leiden of Pendergast Leiden for legal services. Number 5, consideration of request to waive the fidelity bond requirement in connection with holding a raffle in the city of Lake Forest for Lake Forest Country Day School. Consideration of award of a contract for professional services to conduct a community-wide survey by ETC Institute for an amount not to exceed $26,500, as we just heard. Any members that want to take any items separately? Alderman Bushman.
Mayor Pro Tem Morris, first I'd like to ask a clarifying question on the minutes, and then I will have an agenda item I would ask to handle separately. In the minutes, there's a statement, it's in page 16 of our agenda, where it states that Mayor Pantalone stated that the turf field will require maintenance in 10 to 15 years only on the rug and infill. He also added that the revenue gained will be allocated for the sole purpose of maintenance and associated cost. From our earlier meetings, I was of the understanding that the thought process was that the revenue generated from the fields would go not only to ongoing maintenance, but also like a reserve fund accruing funds to pay for the actual replacement, whether it be 10 years or whatever out there. I did have the opportunity of talking to Mayor Pantalone today, and he did confirm that that was his understanding. And I just wanted to confirm that when we talk about solely for the purpose of maintenance, it's not the day-to-day maintenance, but the concept that includes the capital expenditure further down the line when it needs to be replaced.
The city manager want to comment, just to follow
I
up?
believe that, well, certainly that is correct in your recollection of the conversations that have occurred at the council level. If it pleases the council, the minutes could certainly be amended to just say maintenance
I'll
and future
defer to those that were
replacement.
present at the meeting. I was not present. Okay.
Very good. Your next item?
And then I would ask for item 3, which is related to the general obligation bond issue, that we discuss it separately because I'd like to explain my intention to vote on that.
Very good. That being fine, that leaves 5 items minus the third item. Could I have a motion to approve those 5 omnibus items?
And I would say, motion to approve those 5 items with the changes to the minutes, so as amended.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second?
I think we need a roll call vote.
Alderman Morris,
Aye?
Alderman Novit,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Gushgarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
7 yeas, 0 nay.
Thank you. Alderman Bushman, proceed.
Thank you. I'm sorry I could not attend our last meeting on February 21 when we introduced the topic of the financial aspects of the artificial turf field. I was hoping, and I had assumed would be at tonight's meeting as outlined in the staff timeline agenda. But do respect the council deciding when they want to decide to act. The majority certainly can so act. But I think it's fair to say that in looking at the improvement, I've struggled both from an environmental standpoint in terms of what we're producing, what we're putting out there, what risks are there. I've also struggled with the issue of what other communities have done that seem to be having recreational departments that some don't have any artificial turf, some have 1 or 2 fields. And then the Johnson Consulting report that had statistics that talked about how much usage we're going to be generating with the 9.5 acre fields. And it's something like 8,640 available field usage hours, which are 3 times what we currently have at Deer Path. And even when we bring 3 other fields over there for the so-called absorbed field structure, we're still producing something that has a usage factor of double that. Which then brings me to the very point of tonight of talking about bond financing. I see that we're, overbuilding, overspending. So for that reason, I don't feel I can support whether it's a 10-year or 15-year bond financing. And I do thank you for giving me the opportunity for expressing that opinion.
Very good. Well, I would accept a motion to approve item number 3.
So moved.
Second.
We need a roll call vote.
Excuse me. Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Gushgarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Nay.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye?
Alderman Novit.
Nay.
5 yea, 2 nay. Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of this meeting. If there are any other discussion items from the council that you'd like to bring up this evening, now is a good time to do that. If not,
Old business.
oh, excuse me, you're right. Excuse me. The old business, let me move over to that, I'm sorry. The old business is approval of a request from the Cemetery Commission to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Semper Fi Land Services for renovations to the Memorial Garden at the Lake Forest Cemetery for an amount not to exceed $905,000 and approval of an interfund loan with the cemetery to borrow $905,000 from the city to be paid over a 10-year period at 3.5% interest. Mr. Myers is going to comment on this.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Temp and members of the council. Good to be here tonight. This is a project that some of you have heard about over the years. It's come to you. It's been a long time in the making for the design and a lot of decisions, so it is really good to be here to seek final approval for the contract to do this project. So I believe the last time we brought it to you was for a portion of the project that we purchased last year, but I'll get to that in a moment. So I have an aerial photo, not a very attractive one, but as many of you know, the gardens are right at the entrance of the cemetery. As you're pulling in, they're just off to the right. You can see that there are the two larger gardens here. This is considered the fountain garden. This is the spire garden, and this is the evergreen garden, and then the lake garden, the lake being just to the east of this. So I bring that up because we're going to talk a little bit about the design. I'm not going to go into it too deep, but there are, it has been around for a while. It was built originally in 2000, and we have, at the time, a decision was made to reduce the scope to meet the budget. And at that time, some of the decisions that were made involved reducing the number of niche fronts, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but also the fountain and the grading on the fountain wasn't quite right. So if you've been out there, you know that there are some issues. It's been there for 23 years now, so it is seeing some aging, but it's also, some of it was due to a change in the scope. So back then they anticipated having this project have a second phase, and it also included the spire. And the spire garden, as I mentioned, was the second garden. Right now there's just a concrete structure, a circle in the middle that has been planted. It's been planted, so it was an attractive place, but it was intended to be a spot for a future spire. And I think the spire was around 30 feet tall. We originally, as we were going through the design phase over the last few years, originally we thought we were going to be bringing that to you. Over time, we decided that it wasn't, the cemetery commission decided that we would not go forward with that. For various different reasons. But we thought that it was important that we move forward with the niches and to some of the general improvements that needed to take place. Particularly a lot of the bluestone that you walk on out there is crumbling and it's in pretty bad shape. So that was a big part of the renovation. So we hired Craig Bergman to do the design work for us. They've been working on this on and off for a few years now. So we're now at the point where we vetted the design. The cemetery commission is in agreement that they want to move forward with it. So before I jump into this, sorry, I jumped ahead, but some of the main elements that it includes, the fountain area is being totally renovated. The fountain is being lifted up out of the kind of the where it is right now. It won't be a flush pond anymore. It will actually have a 19-inch wall around it. Much more attractive, I think, setup, much cleaner, neater look. That area will also it's a small image, but along the outer side is where some of those new niches, the 414, will be placed. So it'll be in a very attractive setting. But the whole area is going to be reworked with plants. The hardscape is all going to be improved. So they looked, most of the garden is still going to look like it does today in structure. So a lot of the improvements that are being made, we honored the original design. So the walkway, a couple little tweaks to it, but it's essentially going to look the same. It is a bit of a modification in this area, and it will accommodate having people gather there for services. So a lot of renovation here. In this second one, as I mentioned, no spire, but that's where a lot of the niches will go around the centerpiece and along the outer wall. So a lot of the niches go there. And then in addition to that, there's a fountain instead of the planted area that will go there. So at some point, a spire still could be built, but we're not here asking for that now. At the time, back in 2000, they did make the decision to put in the concrete foundations for the niches. So it was a wise move at the time. So it does help us. We're building off of that foundation. Down in this area, it's mainly the bluestone. By the way, they're putting in larger bluestone pieces. There's a lot of small pieces there now, and it's not a high grade. So it's going to be a higher grade, larger, thicker, flat stone, the bluestone. But there's also going to be cobble elements. So it's bluestone cobble for some of the higher traffic areas up in here. So it's not exactly the same, but a lot of the high-end materials are still going to be used, higher than what's out there now. So then a lot of landscaping down in here. There are a few trees that are going to be taken out, but a lot of landscaping going back in there. And same with the final garden down here. That one is pretty much all the stone, the blue stone, so all that will be replaced. There is new irrigation coming in and some drainage improvements. So a lot going on with the project as a whole. It is going to make it a beautiful place, I think. And you saw in the original picture, it is a pretty magnificent spot. I think our residents, the visitors out there, they love this space. I think it's going to really do it justice. I think that we have had some concerns with the stone crumbling and the safety and all of that. So it is going to be a nice improvement at the cemetery. So with that, we did undertake a bidding process. So after we had the design work done last fall, we issued a bid, and in December we received 2 bids, one from Krugel Cobble and one from Semper Fi. We have worked with Krugel quite a bit in the past. We're familiar with them. Semper Fi came in lower. They came in at $821,000 as compared to Krugel Cobble's $930,000. So we did a pretty robust effort to look into their other projects that they've done. So we've done some reference checks. We've heard great things about the company from everyone. We reached out. We did talk to 6 different communities that have used them, and they were all incredibly impressed with their professionalism, the quality of their work, the way they keep their sites. Everything was outstanding. So with that, the numbers that we got back, the $821,000 was for their work. We put in a contingency of $83,000, 10%. And then I have on here the cremation niches. That is what we came to you for last year. And that was $190,000. So that is already in the works. We needed to have that start last year so that it would be ready when we started the actual construction. And we've been working with the company. They're out of Minnesota. They're at the point where things are constructed, but they'll be ready to start coordinating with us to get it in place when the project starts. So the total project cost is $1,095,500, and that does include the cost of those niche fronts as well. So Just a little bit about some of the evaluation that we did. Just for your information, the 10-year average indicates that 63% of our internments have been cremations. Nationally, just a few years ago, it reached 50%. The city has always been a little bit ahead of the national average, and it continues to trend that way. So it's expected to be at 66% by 2030, and that's the national number. So at the current prices, the income that will be realized from this project, from the sale of the 414 niches, totals $2.5 million. Based on the current estimates for construction and finances, the rate of return on that would be around 132% for those 414. These are niches that we believe will sell because they're in an area that has previously had good sales right across from them. Obviously, this is a new area for them, but we already know that there are a lot of people that are interested and know about these coming up, so we expect them to be sold in a timely manner. There are still plenty of niches in the original area. There are some spots in there that apparently are less desirable, and there's plenty out there, but this is adding to the premium area that people really want to purchase. So we did look at finance options. Director Holub met with the commission a couple times over the last few years. We actually came to you, talked to City Council about it as well back in 2020. We looked at some of the options on how to pay for it. One was the bond issuance, a second was a bank loan, and then the third was city financing. So at this time, and after we had evaluated this recently with the commission, our recommendation was, because the cemetery is part of this government entity, an interfund loan from the general fund is what we are requesting. So the terms of the loan would be the $905,000 over a 10-year period at 3.5%. So if approved tonight, just to give you a quick overview of what will happen next, we would finalize the contract over the next week with Semper Fi. Then we begin to do some of that coordination between ICOF, Semper Fi, Bergman, and with us, of course. And then the construction date would start June 1st. We did that June 1st based on our feeling that May is not it's a very busy time at the cemetery. We didn't want to disturb the regular visitors there, and it's a big month of getting ready for the season. So we decided that the disturbance would be too great for that, so we're starting at June 1st. Our contractor is also very aware of the sensitivity of that area, and they're very respectful of that, and they will work closely with the cemetery sexton to make sure that if there are funerals, there will be a stoppage. They're fine with that. Also, if there are visitors, we do plan on keeping it open to the best of our ability. Of course, there will be times where it'll be more difficult than others, but we are planning on leaving it open and providing safe passage for visitors. So the contractor is also very aware of that and will be sensitive to the needs of visitors. So with that, we're expecting the final completion by Semper Fi to be September 22nd. So you've read the action already. I won't read that one again. It's kind of a long one, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd also mention that Director Holub is here. If you have questions about the finance, she's probably the better person to answer those questions. But I also have John Anderson. He's the chair for the Cemetery Commission as well. So with that.
Questions from the Alderman. Alderman Bushman.
It's maybe a financial question, but I'll let you take the first swing at it, Chuck. when we talk about an interfund loan, who is the obligor on that loan? What sort of entity or title are they? Or
Here she comes.
No first swing. We're just going to hand that over to Elizabeth.
Chuck, you swung and missed.
So this is a unique situation because the cemetery is part of the city entity. And so we did not need to be as formal as we were, for example, with the loan last year for the Ragdale Foundation. So the cemetery commission and the cemetery fund would be the obligor to the general fund. This is simply a balance sheet transaction, and so we create an receivable in the general fund, a liability in the cemetery fund, and then we just budget the annual payments. The only thing that really generates an income statement presentation is the interest that the cemetery fund will be paying the general fund for that.
So if they don't pay, we can sue ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Another question, I'm sure they will, but in terms of the payment, I saw two different references. Interest payments will be made annually. The principal payment, is that amortized and paid annually, or is it a lump sum at the end?
No, we'll make level payments over the 10-year term.
Okay, so at the first year, there'll be like a mortgage payment to pay off of the principal too over the course of the 10 years.
Correct, yep.
Thank you.
Alderman Weber?
Thank you, and thank you for the thorough presentation, Chuck. You hit a couple of my questions. One was regarding the sensitivity to the area, not just the neighbors, which are really important, but also the deceased themselves. And so just kind of, if you can give a little more detail about the spire portion of the garden, no spire, but they have the footing there, and they're going to be putting landscaping in that circular area. Is that correct instead?
Yeah, well, it's landscaping in the beds off to the back. So behind where all of the niches would be, there would be some stone along the edge, but then it'll still be grass where it is now. So it does remain grass.
And looking forward, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, does the commission feel that they are still interested in putting some sort of an art piece there or commemorative? Is that still is part of the?
I don't want to put John on the spot, but it looks like he's willing to.
Thank you, John.
I think it's an important question, but at this time, the cost of actually of constructing the spire just seemed, given the cost of supplies generally at this time, it just felt unnecessary, and it didn't support the benefits of having it, even though it is aesthetic. Clearly, it was part of the original design. I think this will give us some more time to assess that, to see if we want to do something in the future, but probably not in the near-term future. And then on top of it, I think that then sort of gets to the question of our neighbors, our residents in the area. Obviously, we're going to do a lot to help communicate early on with what we're doing here, but this one particular issue might have been a bit more challenging if we had built that, because it's, I think, 35 feet tall.
Sure. Well, I think what the project is really good, and I'm excited that they're going to invest in this for really so that residents can have their final resting place still here in Lake Forest.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other Alderman? No? Alderman? No? No? All right. Well, thank you, Superintendent Myers. Very good. That brings us to any comments from the audience? Any questions? If not, we'll bring it to a vote. So I'll read this again. So I'm looking for a motion to approve a request from the Cemetery Commissions to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Semper Fi Land Services for renovations to the memorial gardens of the Lake Forest Cemetery for an amount not to exceed $905,000, and approval of an interfund loan with the cemetery to borrow $905,000 from the city to be paid over a 10-year period at 3.5% interest rates. Second?
Second.
We need a roll call vote.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gushgarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye?
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Notes.
Aye.
7 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is new business. I don't have anything on the agenda for new business. So the last item is additional items for discussion by the city council members, if there are any. If not, and there being no further city business, we will adjourn into executive session. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn for the executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 parent C .11. The city council will be discussing pending or imminent litigation. May I have a motion?
Second.
Do we need a roll call vote?
We do. Alderman Gushkarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye?
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Notes.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman
Very-
Gushkarian. I said that right. You get to vote twice.
We're not even in Chicago, but given the opportunity, why not? Aye.
Oh, the second time.
We're good?
7
Very good.
yea, 0 nay.
We are going to adjourn into executive session. We will come back at the conclusion of that and adjourn the meeting formally. Thank you very much.
You have